You've probably been hearing the hype about Solana, but you don't really know what it's all about. I'm Brett at CryptoGX, and in this video, I'll break down what Solana is, something called the proof of history clock that helps keep this blockchain fast, its booming NFT and DeFi scene, how it stacks against Ethereum, the risks like network outages, and whether Sol's future is bright or bumpy. Stick around to the end and you'll have a really good idea of whether or not you might want to be interested in getting involved in this project and investing in Solana yourself. So let's start with what Solana actually is. It's a computer run by over 1,000 independent validator machines scattered worldwide. Basically, these are different nodes or different devices that are running the blockchain network. And as you can see on the Solana website itself, there's over 1,000 current validators. And essentially what this means is that these particular computers maintaining Solana is that there's not one single group that can flip an off switch. There's no one device that is in control of the entire thing. So even if a few nodes drop off, the ledger just keeps moving it anyway. That large spread out crowd makes the network hard to shut down, and really it keeps it secure as well. To agree on new records or new transactions on this blockchain, Solana blends something called proof of stake, which is validators locking up their Solana tokens in order to vote, and blending that with a built-in cryptographic clock called proof of history. This is essentially a process that stamps every entry in order and then removes the wait for outside time signals. So essentially what this means, if we simplified it, is if you had a little number sticker, a little gun that printed out numbers, and it was 1, 2, 3, the stamp would be like a little squiggly line, something special to characterize this particular transaction and know that it's valid. And the outside time signals, or the clock, essentially you need to know which order these transactions went into, so which one went first and so on. And so there is a clock within this blockchain to know, okay, 1 squiggle, 2 squiggle, and to know which order these transactions went in. This design lets the blockchain push about 4,000 plus real world transaction each second. And you can see that right here on the Solana Explorer website, right here, 1 minute ago, 4,220 transactions per second. Because these blocks, aka groups of transactions, arrive so fast, the average transaction fee stays under half a cent, which is far cheaper than most blockchains. Under the hood of this code, something called a parallel runtime named C-level really just spreads smart contract work across many CPU cores. So the speed rises as the hardware improves. Essentially what this means is that it can work on multiple transactions within a specific computer on different pieces of the computer hardware that wasn't available before, and it maximizes the efficiency of how these transactions are run on all of the nodes or all of the computers that are a part of the Solana network. There's some descriptions about this on the Solana website about how this parallel smart contract runtime works, and if you scroll down here, there's a little bit more detail on the kind of CPU responses and how it registers and all of this. It's a little in the weeds and not super important, but just know that the technology on Solana is advancing. Now, if you're staking Solana, which basically means that you own Solana and you lock it up in one of these staking pools, you will be helping the validators, and you can earn roughly 7 to 8% in rewards per year. These rates do change over time depending on the traffic of the network, so you got to keep an eye on it, and there is some potential risk here, but generally it's a great way to earn yield on your tokens as you just kind of leave them there and hold them. As you can see on stakingrewards.com, you can look at the Solana staking providers and see what the different reward rates are, what the fees are, how many tokens are staked, and the rewards that you would get after a year, with $10,000 being your minimum amount that you put in. Now with this, there is also a roadmap for Solana. With all of these advancements, there's lots of things that are going to be developed. Engineers say a 2025 upgrade will essentially double Solana's block space. This means that it's going to open up room for even more traffic, more transactions. And you can see a lot more on this article on solanacompass.com about what's coming for Solana in 2025. They've got things like their network upgrades, doubling their block space, new consensus algorithm, and you can get a bigger sense of what's happening with Solana on articles like this. But don't worry, we'll keep you updated with all these updates, so make sure to subscribe. If we sum all this up, all of these tools are really just adding up to a blockchain that's built for lightning fast trading, NFTs, and games. And this kind of sets the stage for the deep dives that we're going into next with their history and their origins. So the speed of Solana didn't just pop up overnight. Solana's story starts in 2017 when ex-Qualcomm engineer Anatoly Yakovenko published a white paper on proof of history. This is a built-in clock for blockchains. And you can see that here on web3.career. You can find all sorts of white papers for different coins. They'll give you a little abstract, which is kind of a summary of the white paper as a whole. And then you can read into the entire white paper, which I recommend doing. It's good to at least understand how a white paper works and what a white paper developer is, which basically is kind of an understanding of the theory of this new blockchain that they're developing. So a year later, he raised seed money from Multicoin Capital and other backers to turn the idea into real code. And this was a typical seed round in May of 2018 where Multicoin Capital started their investment, and it was, kind of a typical thing like you'd see in the show Silicon Valley. Solana's mainnet went live in March of 2020, so they had about 2 years to develop it after their seed round. And this had an open validator set spread across the world, meaning these open validators, the nodes of the network, was open to anybody to start a node and become part of the network. Now, by December of 2020, the network had already processed over 8 billion transactions. As you can see, they had a year in review post on medium.com. You scroll down, they had a whole thing about their big ecosystem and some highlights here showing 8.3 billion transactions on chain and counting. This essentially was proof that it could scale very, very fast. Almost a year later, in November of 2021, Solana briefly touched $260, pushing the chain into crypto's top tier by market value. Today, we're seeing the effects of this with massive growth within DeFi on Solana, which is peer-to-peer finance, as well as the NFT space, which of course, as you may know, is digital collectibles. So this scene is keeping a lot of developers on the Solana blockchain very busy. Now, all of this tech is great, but how does Solana stack up against the chain everybody is hearing about first? Other than Bitcoin, that one's going to be Ethereum. Solana's developers are really aiming for speed, and that's their main goal. Now, as you can see here from this article on electroiq.com, Ethereum processes about 16 transactions a second. Now, Solana, on the other hand, claims that it can handle 65,000 transactions per second. Now, as we know, the live dashboard that we saw earlier shows about 4,000 transactions per second, pretty commonly and pretty regularly every single day, but they still claim that they can handle much more. Now, obviously, that's a big claim, and they're nowhere near 65,000 right now, being at that 4,000-ish per second currently. But Ethereum's mainnet still handles only about 15 to 30 transactions per second, and this is after its big upgrade. So traffic on Ethereum clogs very fast. And with this in mind, cost is the next factor when processing transactions. A normal Solana transfer burns about 0.000005 Solana, or roughly 0.00025 cents today. That's less than 1/10 of a penny. Now, Ethereum, on the other hand, has much higher fees, and you can see the prices on bitinfocharts.com. It will show you the historical chart of the average transaction fee by day. Today, it's about $1.50. Back in January, it was about $8 or even $12. And before that, the most recent high in November was $14 just for a single transaction. The interesting thing here is that both chains are now running on what's called proof of stake. This is where users lock up their coins to secure the network, and then they earn staking rewards, essentially. Ethereum was on proof of work like Bitcoin is, but that is very costly, especially for miners, things like that. There's a big cost there. It's very not environmentally friendly as well. So moving to proof of stake is, much better in that sense, but the way that Ethereum does it is still not as cheap as Solana is. One of the reasons behind this is that Solana adds proof of history. It's a built-in clock that stamps each block so validators don't argue about the order. We discussed this before. Ethereum switched from the very energy-hungry mining proof of work to proof of stake in 2022's merge, basically shrinking their power use by about 99.9%. But they didn't boost their raw speed yet. All of this to say that essentially Ethereum has a lot of catching up to do, especially when it comes to transaction speeds and scalability and cost. Now, the final section of the kind of Solana versus Ethereum space is decentralization. So as we looked at before on Solana's website, they're very proud of this particular fact, but they have over 1,000 active validators. And big staking firms like Figment run only a slice of them. And you can see that right here on Figment's Solana validator report. They go into all sorts of detail on the metrics and the circulating supply, skip rate, the effectiveness, voting latency. These are very in the weeds kind of stuff, but it gives you a grasp of what's actually happening on the validator network. Essentially what this is saying is Figment is a staking firm, and they run their staking on a specific group of the validators on the network instead of the whole thing. Now, Ethereum, on the other hand, boasts over 1 million validator keys, yet most of them are sitting on a handful of hosting providers, so both chains are still fighting the kind of centralization worries, meaning that the staking partners are not really spread out. They're kind of encompassing a lot of the validators, making the staking pool very centralized. So speed is obviously really cool, but what can you do with this speed? Solana's biggest draw right now is NFTs. These are digital collectibles that you own on the chain. The top marketplace for this is Magic Eden. It handles most of the trades and is now the largest NFT shop by volume. Listing your NFTs on Magic Eden costs nothing, and the site only takes a 2% cut on the transaction volume. So anybody can mint art for very cheap on the Solana blockchain and on the Solana frontrunner for NFTs, which is Magic Eden. Even in an arguably sluggish market, Magic Eden still pushes about $800 million worth of trades in 1 month in 2025. And this is pretty surprising based on how crypto has really been in this first quarter and first half of 2025. So on the other side of the Solana ecosystem is gaming. Gamers are very, very busy as well. The space game Star Atlas just rolled out a patch in May of 2025 with dedicated servers, multiplayer dogfights, and it's all logged onto the Solana blockchain. This is all pretty exciting because it's basically AAA level gaming, but crypto related, Web3 related, and that's pushing a lot of activity, and hopefully that will push lots and lots more over time, because obviously gaming is a huge market. Now on the money side of things, Solana's DeFi, or decentralized finance, which is a peer-to-peer network of finance applications, currently it locks up roughly $9 billion today, which is second only to Ethereum. And essentially what that means is that there's $9 billion in assets locked up in this particular ecosystem, which is quite large. And as you can see from this CoinDesk headline, Solana DEX volume increased by 60 million, looking to extend its 4-month winning streak over Ethereum. So it doesn't win in the total amount that's locked up, but the trading volume is increasing rapidly. Now this obviously means that these apps are booming. Solana dApps, or decentralized apps, pulled in a record $650 million of revenue just in January of 2025. This is a new record for any blockchain. These Solana dApps posted a 24x year-over-year revenue growth, which is just wild. Outside of that, big brands are even joining. PayPal moved its PYUSD stablecoin here, so payments can settle in seconds instead of minutes, which is obviously huge for anyone processing transactions. Coins like PYUSD and any coin on the Solana blockchain runs on the SPL token standard. This is Solana's version of Ethereum's ERC20. So basically, as I mentioned, coins, stablecoins, whatever, all are talking the same language on Solana. Now, where are you going to hold these coins? If you have Solana or any Solana blockchain meme coins or whatever it may be. To hold them, you got to have a wallet. And Phantom has one of the most popular wallets out there. Over 10 million monthly active users are on Phantom. So Phantom is Solana's most used application, and there's a reason why. It has great, user friendliness, very simple, and you can do pretty much anything you want with it. Applications like Phantom or, other decentralized apps capture about 75% of all Web3 revenue. This is dwarfing all other rival blockchains. And because minting or swapping costs fractions of a cent, developers can chase micropayments and fast-paced games that slower networks really could not match with. Unfortunately, speed and cool applications come with downsides that we should really know about. On February 6th of 2024, Solana froze for almost 5 hours. No blocks, no transactions, no swaps, all until the engineers could push a quick fix. Analysts and plenty of other people online list about a dozen other stops since the launch of Solana, mostly caused by traffic spikes or little bugs. However, the chain has now run 250 plus days without another halt. Now, an important thing to kind of go over here when it comes to these outages is validators. These are the machines that confirm blocks or groups of transactions. Anybody that wants to be a validator needs to have 12 CPU cores, 256 gigabytes of RAM, and some guides ask for 384 gigabytes. So the hardware alone can cost thousands of dollars. Now, here's the more specific requirements right here on cherryservers.com that I'll quickly scroll through, and you can do a little pause if you would like to look into that, but it is very, very expensive. Now, because of this heavy cost on gear, there's only about 1,300 validators online, and big hosting firms run many, sparking centralization conversations, meaning they're like, okay, if there's a lot of people running a lot of these nodes, they're having a big portion of control on the network, making it very centralized, and that's not something good within the crypto world. And you can see that right here on solanabeach.io/validators, or just clicking this validators button right here. It will show you the validators and basically their percentage of stake of the whole network. Helios is number one at 3.54%. Critics of Solana also note that fast, coordinated patches hint a small group of core developers still really steer Solana in general, which, looks to be the case, but, what does that mean? Is that good? Do we need that in order to scale into more users? It's hard to tell. Now, Solana, on the other hand, is defending their decentralization characteristic amid their, concern on these patches. And you can kind of go into some detail here on the Cointelegraph article. Basically, this means that the validators on the system have to come to a consensus when these patches go through altogether. And their argument was that the ability to communicate with them, or some of them voluntarily, is not to be confused with centralization. And I happen to agree with that, just because the idea of this network, yes, there are entities with about 3% of the validation network. Well, in my mind, that's not that high. And, people can still grow their percentages of these validators if they want to. And by people, really, I mean companies, but unfortunately, that's the world we live in. Now, finally, you got to really remember price swings. This is the most important thing for retail investors. After peaking in 2021, as you can see, around, looks like 236, maybe up to 260 on certain exchanges. This was in 2021. Solana dove very, very heavily, very, very fast when that crypto bull run ended and went down around $9-10 a piece. This left a lot of investors, especially if they got in around here or, in the middle here when Bitcoin was kind of having a resurgence. It left them holding in the red, and, they're probably finally back in the green or broken even now, but they had to hold a while. It would have been great to have bought down here at, about $10 and, 10x, 20x your investment. But that's what we got to watch for when it comes to these different coins other than Bitcoin, because the volatility is crazy. I mean, there was that pullback in, March and April, February of 2025. Look how steep it dropped from, say, 250 down to about 120, 150. That's pretty drastic, even in the middle of a crypto bull run. So just keep an eye on the larger crypto market. So despite all these potential bumps, let's look into the future of Solana. Number one, household brands are still piling in. As we mentioned before, PayPal just moved its PYUSD stablecoin to Solana. However, there are lots of other companies diving in as well. Visa is testing USDC dollar tokens for card settlements on the network. This is essentially shrinking payout time from days to minutes. Stripe, which as you may know is a big payment processing company, reopened crypto payments and picked up Solana as one of the only 3 chains that it supports. Now there's also upgrades coming to Solana as well. A new client called FireDancer is already showing over 1 million transactions per second in lab tests. And this could cut block finality to 120 milliseconds, which is 4 times faster than transactions today. And not just transactions, the blocks, meaning the entire group of transactions. And as we know right now, the block has about 4,000 transactions in that, and this test shows about 1 million transactions per block. There's lots of people watching the market that think this boost in transactions per second plus rising brand adoption could push Solana towards its next price ceiling, its next all-time highs. If we look at some price predictions, as you can see here on CoinDCX, we've got a 2025 minimum price of 175. Today we're obviously at 176, so that's already above. The average price was at 166 and the maximum price at 212. Now this is a very conservative prediction. They've also got below here upward trajectory of 400 to 450, but this is definitely a very bearish outlook. I've seen lots more predictions that are much, much higher. And a lot of the reason for those higher predictions is because of the talks of future Solana ETFs that have not been approved or listed yet. These ETFs are essentially funds that will be released by big investment firms that will track the Solana price. Basically, it will follow the Solana price, and regular investors can invest in it like they invest in stocks, put it into their portfolio without having to dive into all of the tech crypto mumbo jumbo that's very difficult. Wherever they're buying their Disney stock or Tesla stock, they can buy these ETFs as well and put Solana into their portfolio. In short, the momentum and tech upgrades are really keeping Solana in the spotlight. All those upgrades and big name brands are bringing us to where Solana stands today, really. PayPal now settles transactions in PYUSD on the Solana network, letting dollars move in seconds. Visa is piloting USDC card payments there as well. And Stripe, they just enabled crypto checkouts with Solana on its first rollout. Behind the scenes, the FireDancer update hit a lab record of 1 million transactions per second, which is crazy, crazy fast, seeing that we're on the live version of Solana at about 4,000 transactions per second. Solana has been bouncing between the 160 to 175 range, currently at 178, but there's lots of movement and lots of speculation that it could go much higher, especially because big funds like Franklin Templeton have Solana ETFs in the works, even as regulators are delaying decisions on that. So sure, there's lots of outages like the 5-hour pause in February of 2024, but they remind us just that nothing's perfect. But the thing we like to look at is monthly users, because these outages are constantly get fixed as they have in the past. These upgrades are going to help out with that. But Phantom, the most popular wallet on the Solana blockchain, has 10 million monthly active users. And Magic Eden, the NFT platform, has $800 million in trades, proving that there's a huge, huge demand. So if all of this makes you really excited about Solana and you want to get started or even get other big coins like Bitcoin and Ethereum, I put links in the description for Coinbase and Crypto.com where you'll get $50 in crypto just for signing up with those links. And if you want to get into meme coins, I also left a link to MoonShot where you can claim some free meme coins just when you sign up. If you learned learning something new or just enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and hit subscribe if you want to stay tuned for all things crypto. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.